So, Hax, when did you initially join Oxford United Youth Academy and how did it come about?
It was slightly different back then, so I was a supporter of the club. So initially it was like the Oxford Juniors, so it was like almost like a supporters club, and the academy started slightly later. So, I mean, I've been a fan of the club, and I joined the club 6 or 7 years old, played for the Oxford Juniors, and then joined the academy. Back then it was probably the under 10s, 11s, started playing games then, so for as long as I know really, yeah.
What was the pathway like when you were at that age? What were the steps you had to take to try and get to the first team?
Yeah, like I said, it was different. So you started with the Oxford Juniors and Supporters Club, and then you went into the academy at 10, 11 years old, the old YTS system. So you joined the YTS system at 16, similar to the boys now, like a scholarship, and then into the first team. Then there was no 21s, there was smaller squads. So as a 16-year-old, I think I made my debut as a 17-year-old, but as a 16-year-old, you're really close to the first team at that point. You're an injury away really from getting an opportunity. There might have been a squad of 17, 18 senior pros. So you're in the mix then. So I was kind of in the squad, in and around players like Dean Windass, Joey Beecham, those kind of guys back in the day. You're really close to it and training with those guys who, it was called the old First Division then, but the championship players. So it was fantastic to get that exposure, which maybe the boys now, it's harder to get that exposure so young. Because there's bigger squads, there's an under-21s group in between. So that was a real benefit of having the smaller squads back then, yeah.
But imagine with that, how much did you have to grow up in different ways maybe compared to what the youth academies are like now?
Yeah, I mean, we still try and keep the things similar now in terms of the boys still are in and around the first team players. They still optionally can do the players' boots. Which is good for them socially. The young scholars, they can come in, they do staff's boots, so they get to socialise and speak to the players, speak to the manager. They still are in and around, again, optional if they want to do the first team's jobs. I mean, we've always encouraged when I was in the youth team, the boys to do that, because again, socially it gets you in and around the manager, in and around the players, getting to see what it's like. So the boys still do that. But when I was doing it, it wasn't really optional back then. You kind of had to do the jobs. You're on players' boots. You were mixing with the players. I mean, I had Martin Gray, who'd played for Sunderland, who played at the top level as a 16-year-old lad. You're in around these kind of senior pros, top senior pros who played at the top level, which was fantastic. Really kind of makes you kind of grow up real quickly, see what it means to play at the top level at the time. So yeah, that was a real good learning curve. And like I said, the guys still now try and do those bits because it is a massive part of the game, the social aspect. Sometimes it gets forgotten in youth football. You kind of think it's all about the technical, tactical, the physical, all these bits, but actually the social side of things is massive as well. And we've always been big on that within the academy here, that socially and character-wise is really important. So we'll try and stretch the boys at the club socially and kind of almost psychologically to kind of develop them, whether that's mixing with the players, mixing with the manager, because character is massive as well in the game. Like that foundation of a solid character, it is huge in terms of helping you kind of develop and build your career off the back of that as well.
So how did your playing debut come about, and how ready did you feel for it?
I think my debut came about, thinking back now, it's quite tough to remember. It's many years ago, so Wigan away. So again, it would have been the old First Division, the old Championship back then. I was training with the first team at the time. I was in and around it, so as a 17-year-old, as a first-year scholar, I would train with the first team. I'd be in and around it. And it was coming towards the end of the season. I think we were struggling that season, to be honest. And I got my opportunity to play. I think we lost 2-0 the game. It came on as a substitute. But yeah, I think I felt ready, as you can be. Obviously, there's always nerves for young players coming into a first-team game, but it was something I'd always wanted to do. Being a big Oxford fan, dreamed of making my debut playing for the club. So it was, yeah, I felt ready but nervous for sure.
How much more pride was there on your side, but also did you sense that from other people because you came through the academy when you're making your debut? How much pride was there?
I mean, for an Oxford boy, there's massive pride for Oxford players, Oxford boys, people who have come through the academy. For sure, the fans are fantastic. They'll support all the players, but because we're a one club in the county team, it's massive. So I think everybody has that buy-in for a local player. You see the Sam Longs currently at the minute. You see the Tyler Goodrums, local lads. I think there's extra buy-in from the fans, from the community, when there's players coming through the academy, when they can relate to them, knowing they're local lads. And for me, it was the same, growing up, supporting the club, and then being able to play for the club. It was massive. And I think the area really supports that, and really kind of the youth academy in the county is massive. Whether players have played for the club or they're just supporting the club, it is huge.
Then when you come back after your playing days and you come back in the youth academy as a coach, how much had changed over those 20 years or so?
The academy has changed massively. I mean, the same principles are still there. If you look at when I was first coming through in the academy, there was a guy called Malcolm Elias who lost his life recently, but he was a massive youth developer, and there was massive principles within the club about youth development, really driving that, and I think that's the same now. The big difference for me is the amount of staff and the amount of staff surrounding the academies and the support the players get nowadays. The principles are the same drive to get the players in the first team as it was back when I was coming through, but the support the players get on and off the pitch is massive. The amount of support staff, back then there'd be one coach and a physio, I think that's what it was back then when I was coming through. But now there's so much support on and off the pitch, covering all aspects of the game to support the players, which is massive. So that's the biggest change, I'd say.
What do you see as some of that good work that Youth Academy do now to make players and people for that first team environment?
Yeah, the academy is fantastic. I think, like I said, it's always been throughout the last 20, 25 years that I've supported the club and been around the club. It's always been a massive part of the youth academy. Like I said, we're a one club county, so it is really important that we drive that, and really important that we kind of push local players coming through. The foundation's still massive. Like you said, it's not just about the player on the pitch. The foundation has always been at this football club that you're supporting, you're driving characters as well, driving the social side of it. If you look at this, again, I talk about the Sams and the Tylers, you hear their interviews, you see them on the pitch. They're obviously fantastic players, really, really good players, but you see them as people as well, see them how they are on and off the pitch, how they are as characters. I think that's huge, and for me, that's massive. That's massive. That's almost important as the fancy stuff you do on the pitch, the icing on the cake, the technical, the tactical bits. I think the character is really, really big, and really important that we drive kind of positive behaviours in the player, which gives you the foundation to then build. And I think that's what this academy's always done and will always still do, and which is why we're producing players. Maybe not just at this football club. If you look at around it over the last kind of 5-10 years, there might not be players kind of playing at the top level in terms of the Premier League. There are some that have done it recently, but there's a lot of players playing in the game, in the professional game, that have come through our academy, and I think that's kind of a lot down to the basics, the foundation that we drive at this academy.
You've made the transition from youth academy to first team as a player, but also as a coach as well. In your role now in the first team, how much of an emphasis do you put on trying to bring through that academy and trying to make sure that the manager knows about what's going on in the academy?
My role now, that's a massive part of my role now, to kind of help that transition from the academy to the first team, because it is big, the gap is huge. I think everybody knows that. I think the gap between the under 18s, under 19s football and first team football is big, but it's a gap we want to bridge. The manager's fantastic. I think he's got a history of kind of developing young players. You see SA at Mill was a recent one he kind of brought through, so he's got massive experience at doing that. So we'll have conversations every day. He's fully aware of all the young players coming through. Obviously the boys you see in the first team currently, you see the Tylers, the Sams, the Gatlin Odonkers, and then just underneath that you see the James Goldings, these kind of lads who are playing out on loan as well. But underneath that, there's a group of players that we're currently trying to develop at the minute. You see the Leo Snowdens, there's pathways for those boys. So I guess that's part of my role, to kind of help those pathways and those transitions between the 19s and the 21s and the first team. But like I said, the manager's fully aware of all these players. He watches all the 21s and 18s and 19s games, which are at the training ground, which is fantastic for the boys, which is brilliant for him to see him there. And we have them training regularly with us. I mean, Leo trains with us regularly. It's part of his pathway, it's part of his program to kind of develop him through training initially, and then maybe over the next kind of 6 months to a year, you might see him more within the first team, hopefully making debuts over the next year or so. There's other players underneath that who are on similar pathways, who are doing similar things. So yeah, it's part of the process, it's part of what my kind of role is. But there's Pablo underneath that, and Niall Keown and Stevie's doing a great role within the academy to kind of push and promote that and help that transition for the players. I think the setup of the 21s this year has been great. Stevie's pushed that, which has been really, really good and really important to help bridge that gap for the players to kind of go into and transition to the first team. So that's been a real positive as well, I think.
And just finally, how important is it to have a thriving youth academy, not just across different clubs, but particularly here in Oxford, as you mentioned, with it being a one-county football club?
It's massively important, the academy. For our football club, like I said, for the last 20, 25 years, you look at the players that have come through. You're not maybe talking players who've played for England, but you're looking at players who've made a massive impact on the club and the county, Joey being one that springs to mind. And then players over the past 25 years who've impacted the first team, and then gone on to play at a kind of a higher level, Premier League. There's numerous players I can think of who've done that. But then that's the kind of the icing on the cake. But underneath that, there's players who we've had that have come through and are having real positive careers in the professional game, which is also a positive for the academy. But then underneath that, it's also huge for the community and the county itself. I mean, it gives young players a real drive when they see these players, local players, playing professional football, playing in the Premier League, playing for our football club. It gives them a real drive and a real kind of purpose to kind of, and see that pathway that you can be a young player in Oxfordshire and beyond that as well, and have an opportunity to play for our football club. But also, if you don't do that, it can be a real positive experience for a lot of players. I'm sure there's a lot of players and people in our county who've been through the pathway, who've played for Oxford United, who are Oxford United supporters, maybe who haven't quite made it. But it's been a real positive on their lives and on a real positive experience for them to have done that and played for our football club and have been part of this team, been part of this kind of family that we are.